Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Porter Geer, one of the co-founders of Girl Math Capital, the alternative investing community for women. Founded in 2023, Girl Math Capital exists to support women on their wealth building journeys by increasing the number of women investing in private markets. Porter has spent her career in the crypto and digital asset space and is currently a member of the governance team at Uniswap. She's based in Austin, Texas. Porter, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always so
Yeah.
funny hearing a bio read out loud.
I know, it must be like a weird feeling.
It's awesome.
But yeah, totally. And so you have a very impressive background. And of course, I just gave that intro to you, but would love to have you just start off by sharing with our listeners more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm one of three co-founders of Girl Math Capital. I met my co-founders in college. We're actually really close friends, and we were honestly all in separate career paths, looking to basically expand on our own wealth building journeys and the opportunities we had for ourselves. And we kind of came together as a group and started talking about different strategies. And along the way ended up forming a community, which I can dive more into. But that is something that has been very formative for us throughout our journeys and formative for me. I've always been very financially oriented, financially motivated. I think a lot about my financial setup and the products I'm investing in or the planning that I've done. And I think that's reflected in my career. So, as you mentioned, work in the crypto and digital asset space, have also spent time working with a community fairly similar to Girl Math Capital called SheFi that I got into in about 2020, which exists to onboard women into crypto specifically. And so have kind of always had a passion for integrating financial education and access with bringing other women into these spaces. So something I've been excited about for many years, but obviously I'm super happy to have now under the Girl Math Capital label.
Oh, I love it. And I think it's so fun that you and your co-founders have been friends since college. And so, of course, there's a lot of trust that comes with that. Like you already know each other so well. So I'm sure that getting the idea for Girl Math Capital and starting it was almost like seamless and a no-brainer.
Yes, it was more emergent and natural than I think you would expect. We set out honestly to create an environment for us and a subset of our friends. There were probably about 15 women in the original conversation, which really allowed us to test and learn on what topics were most interesting and most sticky for folks. And we started to circulate the name and the brand at the same time just to see what was out there in the market in terms of interest and appetite. And we ended up running an event in partnership with a company called Gen She at the end of 2024, which really unlocked for us a really great indicator of interest. We had about 500 people on the waitlist for that event. And that was kind of the pivoting point where we were really deciding we can turn this into a full-fledged community that provides, both education and access. So it's been a natural growth process for us, which is very exciting and has helped maintain that trust, as you mentioned.
Oh, totally. And having 500 people on the wait list alone is incredible. And it's a huge testament to the fact that what you three had started to think about in the idea that you started to have was truly like resonating with other people in this age basically as well. And so I think that's incredible that you saw the opportunity and really acted on it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for people who aren't familiar with alternative investing, could you share more about what that is, especially since it's really what Girl Math Capital specializes in?
Yes, absolutely. Alternative assets effectively are just investments that live outside of public stock and bond markets. And if that sounds vague, it's very fair. Alternatives really are kind of a catch-all term that covers everything from hedge funds and venture capital to private debt, real estate, commodities, even collectibles like fine arts and luxury goods technically fall under alternative assets. But historically speaking, alternatives have been sort of the catch-all asset class that has been proven to be a true engine for wealth creation. So, in exchange for higher risk, they also offer the potential for outsized returns. And so, while the public markets are really designed to deliver more steady compounding interest and value over time, many of the greatest wealth building opportunities lie in these private market opportunities. that also was really what drew us to this sector of work. As I mentioned, my two co-founders, Serena and Emma, and I were all trying to kind of think about what the next step was for our own wealth building journey. And we're starting to consider different corners of private markets for ourselves. So within Girl Math specifically, we zoom in on a pretty specific subset of alternatives for the most part, that being angel investing, which is really like early stage venture investing in private companies, and real estate and crypto. And we've zeroed in on those three because we felt like they were the most accessible from a capital perspective and generally from an availability perspective as well.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it being able to provide those three paths makes it easy for anyone who's interested in getting into this space to have an opportunity. I mean, especially real estate, I feel like over the past, I don't know, probably at least 5 or so years, I've noticed an uptick in people who have an interest in real estate investment. So I love that that's one of the things that you focus on.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I think like the general theme for all of it is wealth tends to accumulate more when you have ownership in something. And
Mhm.
so that's really what we're leaning into, and we are definitely excited to continue growing out the real estate side of the business as well.
Yeah. And so would love to hear for the type of woman who is interested in joining the Girl Math Capital community. Like, what are some things that she's thinking about? Like, how would you describe this person who shows interest?
Yeah. I think the woman that we're building for is someone who's really looking to use her money in a way that fits her. And what I mean by that is really someone who's interested in taking maybe more of an active stance in how their money is invested or spent or leveraged. But this could mean that she's a woman of all age ranges, all stages of career, but is really someone who probably already has a solid financial baseline. So
Mhm.
we don't necessarily cover the basics of financial education. So we are looking for someone who kind of has already established that baseline emergency fund, the retirement accounts, like a 401(k) or an IRA, opened a brokerage account, you're familiar with the stock market, and they're looking now to build in diversity, but they're also probably looking to, use their money to create a reality that they want to see in the world by investing in specific things that are meaningful for them. They're looking for other women who are also in the same mindset, who are actively creating space to have conversations about their money and how they build wealth. And they're generally just, as mentioned, looking to do more with their capital. So I think there's a lot of benefit beyond the financial components explicitly in
Mhm.
joining a network like Girl Math. And so someone who's also really ready and open to opening up their network and their circle of influence and like the legacy they're trying to build as well.
Totally. And that's a great point about kind of having that baseline education of your finances first and then being able to kind of take it to the next level. But one question I have for you as a follow-up to that is I feel like sometimes there's a stigma where, especially as women, we have to like be a certain age in order to start like reaching investments or at a certain point in our career where we start thinking about this stuff. But I feel like the best time to start is now. Like you get so much more returns like the longer you're doing this stuff, as you know. And so would just love to hear your advice on that for women who feel like they have to wait and until they get a certain point in their life rather than doing it now.
Absolutely. I am very, very passionate about what you said. Anytime, like there's no time like the present, really. You should start as soon as you have the realization that you want to.
Mhm.
And I think that even if you maybe don't have the full amount of capital that you want to be really investing in certain things, you can still start getting yourself in a place where you are getting the education and thinking about like what that financial plan looks like. For me specifically, I started looking into this space fairly young, and so I hope that that inspires folks. I wrote my first angel investment in 2023, so I was about 26 years old at that time. And that, at made me feel like, hey, am I actually supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be in this room? And come to find out, the more that we've grown this community, we've actually seen a really strong contingency of women who are really getting into this early. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that we're earning more in this day and age. There's different ways for you to make money and have more revenue streams. And so once you've established a strong baseline, you can get started in small increments whenever you want. I think the biggest thing that we talk about within our first session of our cohort is you're probably already a better investor than you think you are. And a lot of that comes from the fact that you can start investing in a lot of these asset classes with $500 to $1,000. And so I think understanding that the capital minimum or the threshold for which to begin participating is probably a lot lower than what people think. And
Mhm.
really just setting a budget for yourself of, hey, this year I want to commit $3,000 into alternatives, or I want to commit $10,000 to alternatives. And it makes it a lot more approachable as you start to think about ways to kind of bucket it into the like financial lifestyle that you already had. That said, I also, to your point, think it's no time like the present, as mentioned, and it's really something that we are trying to grow and bring women who are maybe a little farther along in their career or farther in their lives into the conversation. My co-founders and I are very blessed that all three of our mothers participate in Girl Math Capital and have brought in their friends and people in their network. And so getting to see the impact across generation and share those lessons across generations has also been extremely meaningful.
Oh, I love that. And perfect timing and segue really about the generational piece because that's one thing I've been thinking about as well is I feel like over the past few years, there's been so many conversations and almost like a movement of women just I guess I want to say like being more dependent about having their own money. So women are like very focused about having their own income streams and their own money to invest and things like that if they do have a partner or married compared to having those joint finances. And it's just really inspiring to see women like totally take things into their own hands and keep growing. And so I imagine you see that as well.
Absolutely. I deeply believe that independence and freedom is really tied to your ability to take care of yourself. Crisis, while tragic and can come in many forms, can happen. And so being able to be prepared and have a plan and be able to, like invest in yourself really, which is sort of the ultimate way to do this, I think is the most important thing ever. And so it's been incredible to see that take many different forms through this community, but really just watching so many women set their plans and their financial goals in motion is super inspiring.
Definitely. And like you said, there's a really positive repercussion that comes from it as well. Because, say, for example, with the angel investing piece, women are investing their money, but also supporting a startup that they feel really passionate about and really believe in the mission of. And so I imagine you see that often with the members of your community of women who are just finding these new companies that are doing something good for the world and they're just glad to be a part of it.
100%. That's honestly one of the biggest perks of this job is enabling people to identify opportunities that they resonate with. And not only can they evaluate the trajectory of that company and how successful or not they think they might be, but they also get to put capital towards something that they believe in, which inadvertently is helping to create opportunities for whoever that company's target audience is. I think a great example of this, one of our first investments that we did sort of with a bigger subset of our community this past fall was into a company called Concarlo. They're a biotech organization specifically looking at metastatic breast cancer and a preventative treatment that they have developed. And we were very moved by their mission and the product. Women's health is obviously understudied and underserved, but breast cancer is one of the top killers for women in the recent years. And so this was not only moving for us, but we also had many members who had personally lost a parent to this disease or had friends and family that had been affected or just generally believed in what the founder was creating. And so being able to put your money and build connections with the founder as well for a lot of our members, I think was incredibly meaningful and also just so cool to get to follow along on that journey and say, hey, this company was partially funded by Girl Math Capital, and like here are all of the impacts, but also benefits that come from activating that network behind this organization.
Oh, love that. Yeah, it's like really being able to see the impact firsthand, what investing can do for a mission that is doing something really good in the world, which is really awesome. And one question I have for you too, thinking about this, is that money is a very emotional thing. People have all types of emotions tied to it. It could be fear, stress, anxiety, happiness. Like there's so many different things. But one thing else to think about too with money is that it requires a lot of mindset work. And so I'm curious if you see that with your members, just supporting them through that piece, especially with alternative investing being like the high risk, but even higher reward component that comes with it.
Yeah, I totally think so. I really think a lot about this topic as well. One of our partners at Girl Math is Ellevest, the women's wealth management firm, and they do a lot of work in this space as well. I sort of mentioned this a few minutes ago, but we have this session at the beginning of the cohort, and our guest speaker, Cheryl Kelland, who's the founder of a company called Play Money, talks about how you're already a better investor than you think you are. And I think that that is something very important to start with because a lot of us come into these scenarios with preconceived judgments and notions about how we might be, how good we might be at something, or how much we're able to contribute, or even just like, I'm sure we've had plenty of members who have joined and been interested in the education, but felt, hey, I don't know that I'll reach a point where I'll have the skills or the capital to really do this in a meaningful way. And I think that we have enabled people to break out of that. And I think it's been really, really remarkable seeing the transition from folks who are, hey, I'm learning and getting into my first investment to, okay, now I've made 5 to 10 investments and I can actually start to give advice and perspective and be more of a leader to others in the community who are now just coming in and getting started and are back where I was a few months ago. And so that is not only so inspiring, but it's also just really fun. I think what has been most meaningful for me is seeing how people lean into this experience and effectively kind of falling in love with the process because it's super exciting and rewarding as we talked about to be able to put your money to work in places that you want to see it go and back these businesses and build new relationships with teams building on important problems. So I think the mindset really is also enabled by the fact that you're, surrounded right now by 400 other women who have committed to talking about money in this environment. And so being a very safe space as well definitely helps to kind of expand that sort of potentially restrictive or preconceived notions that a lot of people definitely come in with. I know that I carry my own money perception and money story with me at all times too, but being among women who are talking about money in a way that's so casual, if you will, is super, super cool.
Yeah, love that. And also love the mention of money story. I'm like so fascinated by how we learn our thoughts and perspectives on money from like our parents or our guardians or other people. So if it's like a negative story, just thinking about how to unwrite that is something really, really cool to think about. And like you said, just having the community of Girl Math Capital to be surrounded by such empowered women who are all going through this together is amazing.
Totally. And thank you. I also recently read a book. It's called We Need to Talk, a memoir about wealth by Jennifer Risher, which maybe some of your listeners have heard before, but it is a story effectively about that. It's a woman who worked very early at Microsoft, and her husband was also at Microsoft and at Amazon in the 90s, and they come into astronomical wealth. But she's discovering how all of her, beliefs are showing up for her, even though now she has ample comfort and fallback. And it's really, really interesting. And I think a great place for folks to start if they're not quite ready to talk with others, but to just kind of digest and realize that this affects people at all stages of their financial journey and the way that we resolve it and support each other and normalize being successful and women being okay to talk about money is not gross is by having these conversations.
hmm Definitely. And that's one of the many amazing things about the cohort that you run is being able to bring together women like this in one group to really learn and grow and get involved in alternative investing. And so would love to hear more about the cohort that you offer and the types of things that you provide to your participants throughout it.
Yes. So the cohort is pretty much our primary way that we bring people into the network. Right now, we're running it twice a year. So we're actually have applications open right now for our fourth cohort, which starts in August if folks are interested. But the cohort is effectively an alternative investing boot camp. So I mentioned earlier on, we have 3 primary asset classes that we focus on. Those are angel investing, early stage venture, real estate, and crypto. And this cohort takes our members through about 10 weeks of content, all held virtually, taught in a masterclass format every other week. And in these sessions, we basically break into the investing fundamentals and the diligence fundamentals around each of these asset classes. So you'll get to understand what are the fundamentals of angel investing? How do I diligence a deal? What types of real estate investing are available? How can I think about crypto in the current macro environment? All of these things come together in this format. And by the end of it, our members have the tools and extra supplementary materials to support them as they actually begin deploying capital. So, again, those run virtually, so it's accessible to women really around the world. And it's something we are super excited to continue building out and potentially offer at a more frequent rate, so we can get more folks in the door.
Oh, I love that. And I imagine that for people who are participating in the cohort, that it makes it almost like a seamless process for just getting involved in alternative investing. Like I can imagine there's a lot of overwhelm for people who aren't so familiar with it. So being able to participate in this cohort just makes it that seamless transition and gives them all the tools and resources and knowledge they need to be successful.
Yeah, I think I've found, and I think others might agree with this, that women love to think that we have all the information before we take any action. And putting those two together is a great solve to keep people from staying in just education consumption mode. So, alongside the cohort education, we have weekly deal drops, and those are the actual investment opportunities that folks get to participate in. And so, you then are taking your knowledge while also getting to apply it to real opportunities on a weekly basis and deciding what you want to participate in on an individual basis.
Oh, weekly deal drops. Love that. I'd like to talk more about that. So, how do you source those? Like, what are the types of opportunities that come across? I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, we obviously do some marketing, and by that, mostly in the sense of connecting with a lot of firms and funds in the space to tell them what we're doing and start to source and co-invest with a lot of those teams. We've also been a part of other networks. When I first got into angel investing, I joined some other communities and so was able to share some deal flow from those environments as well. And then, generally speaking, as we've started to kind of get the word out there, our members and the founders that have found us have been incredible referral sources. So, people will now naturally find us through social media, or we also have our members leveraging their own networks to submit opportunities. I think that's one of the best parts about this as it continues to grow is everyone is so motivated and has such unique and impressive network exposure that a lot of our best opportunities are coming from our members. And so that is a great thing for us as we continue to build this out, but we're always looking to get better opportunities. So it's definitely something that we spend a lot of energy on trying to find the right things for our group.
Totally. And as an investor yourself, what's something that you've learned along the way and a piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just getting started in this journey?
Oh my gosh. This is a really good question. I think, well, one of the things that I think people don't realize, as I maybe mentioned a little bit earlier, is one, you can get started for much smaller amounts than you would think. And I also think that the losses along the way are just a part of the experience, particularly with early stage venture. There's this rule called the power law that's effectively you won't hit a home run until after 30 investments, and basically the rest of them or most of them will probably be no outcome or very low outcome, and then you'll have one astronomical winner that will kind of carry the weight of your whole upside. And so I think getting comfortable with the fact that don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like when I was first getting started, I wanted to write more bigger checks, I think, than would have allowed me to participate in other opportunities. So rather than putting $10,000 into one company just because I'm really excited about it, I now take the approach of I have $10,000, let's put five checks of 2K each so I can spread that wealth. I also think knowing that it's an overtime game, particularly around market cycles. Right now we're in a really big era of secondaries for a lot of these huge companies. And so you don't want to over-index in that one basket. You might want to wait until a year later, even save some capital for the next cycle when there's different opportunities and different things that are being funded. Um, but if you're just getting started, I mean, I think there's no better way to learn than by joining in community. So I think joining a network like Girl Math is one of the best things you can do for yourself.
100%. And I'd love to hear what's next for Girl Math this year. I know you mentioned potentially hoping to offer the cohort more than twice a year, but is there anything else that's exciting that you're working on that you're able to share?
Oh my gosh. Well, we are primarily focused on launching the next cohort, which we're so excited about that. I think long term, we would really love to raise our own fund and allow our
Mhm.
members to be our LPs and participants in that, which is something we're really looking forward to. And I think just continuing to be creative in how we build out our partnerships. I think there's just room for so much growth across many different verticals here, whether that's member experience, founder experience for the folks that do pitch us, continuing to elevate all these different touch points around our media and education. And so finding a way to make it accessible for everyone who wants to learn about it, and then also give folks the right opportunities at the right times for them. Just continuing really to optimize the experience so that folks continue to deploy capital because we're only as effective as how many dollars we put out.
So true. And I love the partnership piece that you mentioned because you've shared that a few times, which I think is amazing that you have so many partners that you've worked with to benefit your audience and your members and have that similar goal.
Yeah, thank you. It's very fun. I mean, there's so much blank space, I think, with personal finance and wellness, as we mentioned, money story, like all of it is interwoven and intertwined. And so I think there's a lot of ways to help improve someone's overall life experience, honestly, with some of the work we're doing.
100%. Porter, this has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the podcast to share what you, Emma, and Serena are building with Girl Math Capital. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online because they'd like to connect.
Yes, we are at Girl Math Capital on all social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Same goes for me. I'm at Porter Geer across all socials.
Amazing. And I'll include those places in the show notes for our listeners to easily find you. Thank you so much again for coming on today's show.
Thank you. So great to be here.